Well, hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today it's December 27th, a couple days after Christmas. Got a little sunshine today. Temperatures gonna get to a high of about 3 today. So this is gonna have to be a fairly quick painting. Just can't resist that sunshine on a snowy, little bit of snow still around from our last snowfall. Very mild year this year. But anyways, let's go hunt for that space to paint, and we'll try and keep this to about an hour and a half, which won't be hard because I'll definitely start to get a bit chilled by that time. Got some hiking pants on over some thermal underwear and a few layers just to make sure that I keep warm. Got some gloves for painting and yeah, so let's go find that place to paint. Well, we got our scene to the left of the canvas. You should be able to see the whole canvas here. I'm just going to tilt that up just a bit more so it's better. But the scene is just directly to the left of the canvas. Move that a little bit so it's better see. I find that helps me when I'm setting up the picture myself to be able to see the scene on the left of it if I stand back and use the reference of the camera while I'm filming. But yeah, so we're gonna get going here. Just looking for my little viewfinder because I like to use that while I'm having a look at the scene. One second here. There we go, I got it. I was worried I'd lost it in the snow there for a minute, but by looking through this little viewfinder, I can capture the size of the scene. It's very adjustable, enables me to make sure that everything's in the right spot, and that's what I'll be using as I put my rough sketch in for this painting. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. I can vary that as far as the warmth or the cool that way just by adding one of the colors more than the other. I'm going to put a little bit of a grounding in there. I like feeling like you're not just floating in the air, so we'll kind of establish that on the edge here. And it goes over to the landmass there. I want to try and get a good amount of sky in here, so I just want to make sure that I've got enough room for that tree, and there's some area of trees behind it. And I think that'll probably work out pretty good. Kind of a really rough sort of block in for this. Just gotta tighten that so it doesn't move around on me here. Very light wash, nothing real permanent at this point, just a little bit of a landmass behind those trees that I'm going to suggest right now. A little bit shadowing here. And reflections in the water. Looking to get all those dark areas in quite quickly here. I'm hoping that sun's gonna come out again because it was giving a nice bit of warmth on this little jut out here. I really like the way some of these rough initial markings show up later in the painting, because there isn't enough time to detail. Some of these are just good enough at the end of it to create the effect that I'm looking for. Now I do want to make sure I get that sky in. I really like the way that sky looks today. It's got this sort of softness to it. Let's see if we can get that effect. I'm gonna first go in and put that. I need to work with a different brush here. That was too dirty. There's this very, very almost greenish look to the sky in the back of these that I really want to capture. Just kind of painting downwards so I don't pick up any of that, or as little as possible of that burnt umber and blue there, just to keep it clean. It's definitely got this greeny kind of a tinge in it there. And then a little bit more ultramarine blue in there as it goes up to the top there. I'm going to start at the top and kind of blend that as I work down. I'm going to leave a few areas white there where those soft clouds set in. I'm not trying to completely copy, but just get that effect that I like in there. And there's this darkness too to some of that, those clouds, just along the bottom edges there. A little too dark there. That seems to run across the sky a bit there, and then some of those upper ones. Add a little more white to that. This is kind of behind the scene, and I don't want it to really be the main focus, but I do kind of like the way those soft clouds are billowing in behind everything. It's an evening sky, even though it's only just after 2 in the afternoon. Our sun's gonna set here by 4:30 at the latest today, I think. So I think I like that. That's given me enough of that I wanted to capture for now. There's some hints of that brighter, using cobalt teal in there for that. A bit more hints of that as it comes down. And then there's actually a little bit of a yellowing in behind there, and I want to capture that because I like the way those trees behind are highlighted by that brightness of scenes behind there. Not so much behind the trees here, but just in that. I'm gonna put a little bit of alizarin in there just to cool that down a little bit. Oh, it's too much. Hello. Oh, I'm just getting careful. This is very slippery in here. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I'm just starting, so it's just the block-in stage right now, but
they're lovely. It's lovely.
it's coming, but it'll be a while.
Anything is better than I can do. So that's good.
Yeah. Hey?
Is it watercolor that you
No, this is oils. Yeah. I kind of have to work quick because I have about an hour and a half of true light here, and that's when the scene starts to change. So
because of the lights. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it changes every about an hour and a half. It's totally different, right? So I've actually got some gloves if I need them. But
Have you painted the same scene in the summertime?
no, I haven't. But I keep looking at this tree. I've painted some other things around here. But today I thought, you know, I've been looking at this tree.
The one that's leaning.
Yeah,
It'd be nice.
in
Yeah,
here.
it's gonna come in
So that's
there.
gonna kind of be.
But your sky is wonderful, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of a quick rendition of it right now, but it's gonna be the backdrop. I don't want it to be the main
That
focus
tree
of
isn't
attention,
gonna be
right?
there forever. One of these
No,
years.
I know. And you know, when that sun comes out, it looks really pretty because you get the side light on it.
Oh yeah. And the split
Yeah.
light, maybe.
Yeah, I hope so.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Wash your hands.
Thanks.
But you have snow pants on. So
I do, and I got like thermal underwear. It's so sweet. I've really kind of learned to embrace that. The fact that people just really are drawn to you when you're out here. Now I want to capture just that little bit of tree line at the back there. You're not going to see a lot of color in there because it's quite far off in the distance. So it's going to actually look more brown than green. So I'm going to put a little bit of the blue into it, but there's just this tree line that comes in behind, and I really have to, with this picture, make sure that I do these areas first so that I can work on those trees in front of it. Adding a little bit of yellow ochre and some ultramarine blue in there. I do want to see just a little bit but darker. Trying not to make these identical and mark there. In fact, I think I'm going to change my brush here for a minute and just go into just a little bit smaller one for those for just a moment. Kind of dragging that up from the bottom seems to work best, and kind of leaving the sky alone that way. Ultramarine blue, a little bit of yellow ochre and brown, and they kind of just backlit by that little bit of yellow at the base there. I kind of like that. And then there's this little bit of a back hill there behind me. I'm gonna go a tad bit lighter with that, adding just a little bit of titanium, but it's sitting in there. There's also a bit of a snow ridge on the top of that I'll capture in there. Nothing too precise here. This is still really a part of the block in. I'm not wanting to over detail at this point. Go even a little bit, just a little bit smaller here with this brush, just and a little heavier with the paint, I think. We've got, I'm seeing some definite signs of kind of a warm yellowy ochre in this land mass over here. Some of it quite dark. And there's little bits of snow in between there, so I'm kind of leaving some areas that are a little bit lighter, and I can come back and put some snow in those later. And there's also a little bit of an edge right along the bank there that's fairly obvious. Again, this is the ultramarine and burnt sienna. And it seems like those colors are used a lot. They definitely are, because they really do help you create those darks in the picture. I want to add just a tiniest dot of alizarin crimson in there, because I am seeing a little bit deeper red in some of these bushes that sort of come along the edge of the scene here. Just little tufts of grass in there. And then there's also some a little bit lighter and more ochre bits also sitting just behind that. Just grasses really that are poking through the ground between the snow. Some a little bit more stronger darks on this area here. And again, there's these very warm grasses that are coming up into the silhouette of the light water behind. Those darks in that are right along the edge here. I'm really hoping that sun's gonna come out a little for me here. Brighten things up just a little bit. Wasn't sure I was gonna get out today because it's quite cool, and when it's really cold like that, I really do prefer it if there's a little bit of sunshine. Putting in some of that yellow ochre now, mixing it in. Nothing too precise here. Everything's just sort of old grasses that are clumped, and there's a bit of a icy melt right there, and then this goes into some rocks that are over here. I'll have to throw some highlights in around those later. And there's a little bit of a darker patch in that water there. That gets some darks into this foreground area too, along the edge. There is some kind of dirty snow where people have walked through it. I like to have that bit of foreground in there to, looks like you can, oh, that sun's coming out again. That is lovely. I want to get that sense of warmth now that I saw in the scene. I want to get that in there at the back of these trees. So scrubbing in some yellow ochre, a little bit of cad red light, and some white just to warm that up in there. Oh, that's the scene I looked at when I got here. I don't want to over detail the tops of these trees, but hint at those branches that are coming up in there. And oh, love these colors now that are coming in. I was waiting for that to happen. And then there's definitely those warm bits that are also in the front here. Gotta capture these while all that light is still glowing. Just totally warmed up that scene. I'm going to be adding some darks in there also, but not sure if I'm going to bring that tree line all the way over, because I kind of like the feel of this right now in there, and it'll just kind of look like a band of trees, and I think I might stop that tree line there and then show that little bit of background that goes further back into the picture. Just seems like I like the way that feels right now. That is your license to change things as a painter. We're definitely not photographing, so we can do kind of what we want. Now I'm adding some blue into my white here, and I'm just putting that shadowed snow line in on the other side there. And then some hints of that on the bank also. It's like little patches that are still left over from our snowfall. And also in this area here, the snow is to put a little bit more white out on my palette here. Just going to turn it off for a second. Back at it again. I'm just adding a little bit of my ultramarine blue to this white. And I can add some highlights to it later. And there's definitely some little areas where people have stepped on the snow, or it's in a shadier space. Going fairly heavy with this so that it pops a bit. Let's get a little bit of that snowy area in down below here. Shade sort of runs in behind. A little bit more blue. And there is actually this sort of grayed area of, gonna add a little bit of yellow ochre into that. It's sort of like an icy area that's just sort of gray and yellow. And that yellow ochre seems to work well with that ultramarine and white there to create that color. There's some areas that are a little lighter, and I can leave some of that kind of bare, so I can create that whiter look. Kind of got a little more of that dirty yellow blue look in along this edge here, and up along that edge where the snow meets the dirt. A very kind of dark bluey color in this water over here. There's little patches of that. We can come in and kind of highlight that later. And again, there's a fair bit of rock in there, so there'll be some darks that we'll highlight later on. It's a little kind of covering the canvas here. I don't think there's ever a like a complete way that I do every picture. Some of them are slightly different. I do try to remember to get all those darks in first. Sometimes I can get a little sidetracked when I start in an area, but every time I go into an area that hasn't had paint on the canvas yet, just to remember to get those darks in there. Those darks are going to be what's going to help to show up those lights later. More yellow in there. The sun is just beautiful right now. It's all about capturing light out here. Darken that tree line in the back there. Not so much on the tops of those trees, because they'll sort of disappear as they go into the skyline there. Kind of avoiding putting the tree in that'll go in at the end of the painting. Let's get some of that back area of, there's some snow in there. In the distance, definitely in the shade, it's very, very blue, and then some that runs up on that little mound of hill there. And it's quite bright actually. On top of that, so we'll go in and add some highlighted areas to that. On the edge. Lit along the upper rim there. Never completely white. There's always just that little bit of color in there. Catch some of that in the bottoms of those trees also. Just by using the brush with a very light touch can create more of a dry brush effect, which kind of makes the paint a little thicker, and that pops that white just that little bit more. Now, there is just a little hint of it in behind these trees, so I'll kind of put that in there now. Now, let's put in some of these lights around some of these rocks in here. Kind of pop those out a bit. I'm going to go to a smaller brush for this because it is very kind of in around the rocks, and I want to, it's a very cool color, but I don't want to create every rock, but just give it an effect of that water that's moving around them. Probably go back and forth with some darks and lights here just to get that reflective look. Left an area there quite white because there's a lot of reflection coming across here. Of course, the sun is coming across like this right now, and that's where those lovely highlights are coming from. There's actually a little bit of a warmer area across the way there too. Add that into that snowy white. And as you can see, some of these initial marks that I put on are working with the painting. I like the looseness of them, so we're gonna leave that alone. We're probably not gonna touch that much of anything there. See another light, a bit of snow line there. I'm going to go into a little bit more of this dark color, just to hint at more grasses there. And I go back to my larger brush. I don't want to get too detail-y. It's still a little early, but just getting some of that grassy look in there. I don't want that to be really where the eye goes, but let's continue putting on some flicks of highlights in this area here. Doesn't really look blue from this area. It's kind of got a browny, bluey, deep look to it. Not get a little bit more in there to contrast that shoreline on the other side there. Want it to look like there's movement in it. Kind of a dirty bluey brown. Put that even in this area with some hints of it through the ice here. As the light hits that ice, it shows a lot of different colors in it. Now I just want to take that dirty white and just kind of establish that line where the ice meets the dark. We'll have to go in, I see, and darken that also. Behind it, it's that old thing again, you need dark to see light, so it definitely requires some going back and forth sometimes to get the right values. I'm gonna use a little bit smaller brush here. That sun's coming down pretty low. I might actually just take a couple of minutes just to get an umbrella up here so that you can actually see what I'm... There, that should help it from getting too bright so you can see what we're doing here. Just lost my rag here. Where did it go? I don't like stopping while I'm painting, but that sun was definitely starting to not work for me. A little bit of blue and ultramarine blue again, and some burnt sienna to create some of these rock formations down there. A few of those rocks sort of go out into the shallow part of the water there. Bit of a lighter area as that sun hits that little piece of land at the bottom of the yellow ochre, and a little bit of the burnt sienna and white, and a tiny bit of the ultramarine blue. A little bit more yellow ochre there. Just want to go back to my larger brush. I'm actually gonna grab a medium-sized brush here. Get some of these little grass details that are glowing in the light there. Some of these up top here also. Some more information there. Some of that area in there, as it's now that it's lit up, has got this very a smoother sort of a effect on the water there. I like that, so I'm going to put that in. And this landmass here needs to be lighter than that is, so. I'm going to have to go darker behind there. Ultramarine in there. There's a few highlights there that actually sort of separate the, because it's backlit on that piece of island there. So we'll put those in just almost like a rim lighting because it shows the difference between the two pieces of land. Let's get a few more, a little bit darker spots in there. Again, ultramarine and burnt sienna. They're probably a couple of the most used colors out here painting for those darks. Little blue, and with that white is reflecting that sky. A little lighter with that edge there. Warm up a little bit of that. I'm seeing a lot of warmth in that icy area right now. And on this little lead lemon yellow, I'm adding into this because that light is really hitting the edge of the bank there. Capture that while I see it, and it comes all the way out here. And where that sun is catching on the top of that. Shadier clump of snow in there. There's some dirty snow there too. Under the tree. Now I do want to get some more of these dark patches that are in the snow there. They are nice and warm, but there's some areas there that around the base that are still fairly dark. Now, before I lose these nice dark lines, let's get a few of those in there in the background before I work on the foreground. Not trying for an exact, hey? Try to make these as not all the same and without over detailing. Just using the side of the brush here so I can create a better line, and fading some of these off into that back area a little lighter, adding just a little bit of a warmer, lighter tone into that I have mixed up on my palette, and just adding some so that looks like they recede towards the back a bit. I've created that mass of lighter blocking, which kind of gives the effect of there being trees in the background, but you still want to kind of make sure you have some different layers of darks there so that it gives it even more depth. I do like some of those golds that are still showing up in there. I'm gonna just add a few more into that. And to create the tops of these, I don't want to over detail them, but just kind of create some softness along the top there that kind of hints at some branches above on the tops. Kind of dry brushing these on. Changing directions a bit just to make sure it doesn't look too much the same. Okay, I think we're safe at this point to kind of give that, get that tree in the front there. Those few trees that are on the bank. I'm going to pull this one from the bottom, and it doesn't have to be exact, but mainly concerned with where that sits in the composition. So kind of turning the brush a little as I go here, just creating a nice base for it. Be darker on the right side of this because of the sun that's hitting. Adding a little ultramarine blue to darken that now. Like I say, this doesn't have to be a replica of that exact tree, but I kind of like the shape of it, so I'm gonna try to maintain some of that. There's a nice branch or two that are coming down off of that. Now keep in mind that these don't have to necessarily connect. You can let them disappear a little bit. behind it. Get those in. This one sort of splays out. I'm not too worried about the detail branches in this right now, just getting their basic location in the picture. And then there's this solid threesome here that is right next to that. And that's just sort of coming up. One coming that way. And then one that sort of bends a bit around the back side there. It's very dark, that one. This one is, they tend to lighten up as they go towards the ends. I've always liked the way these trees have just sort of always been backlit when I look at them. I've walked by this area a few times and it's always sort of looked like an interesting picture. I don't mind that these are actually going off the page here. And there's actually another small one off to the side. Sometimes it's helpful to just get in the main shapes of these and then add a little bit more detail when you get back to the studio. That trunk at the back here is quite dark. In some darks here around the base of these trees a bit, just to ground them a bit. It's amazing how many different colors you start to see in snow when you look at it. There's the cool tones and the warm tones, and makes it for actually quite an interesting picture to paint. This nice warm edge along there. Actually, just want to grab a bigger brush there. I've left the detailing of the trees because I don't know how much time I'm going to have left to complete this. And right now it's more important to get the light effects in that I'm seeing. Got a mixture of burnt sienna and yellow ochre here with a little of that lemon yellow just to highlight some of these grasses on the edge. Hard edge here where the snow comes up in the sunshine. Some grasses that are coming from the edge also. Seeing some, it's funny, the longer you are out, the more things you see as you go along. There's a little bit of a dirt mass there on the edge of the snow, and I like the contrast. Some of these details aren't really overly important, but I like the contrast of them in the snow, so just kind of hint at some darker bits in there. Little things that are just sort of in the snow. Let's want to give a little bit more of a effect in behind those trees of those branches. Sun's getting kind of low now, but we've got most of our light effects in the picture, so now I'm just sort of fiddling with some details that I have seen, and a little heavy, that branch there. I want to create a little bit hard or of a darker edge in that back area there. It runs all the way along the edge of the water. It's quite distinct. Got a tiny bit of alizarin added into that mixture of burnt sienna and yellow ochre just to add some extra color on the other bank, and put a little bit in here too. There's definitely some warm grasses this time of year. I never would have realized how much color there still was in the landscape in the winter. Sometimes when you're looking at it overall, it can look a bit dull, but yeah, the longer you look at it, the more colors you seem to see. I like the way these little grasses kind of are backlit by the water there, so just getting those little hints of that in there. Just kind of pulling up on the brush a bit to create a bit of a grassy effect. Sure. Get a little cold, that's when I know it's time to quit, right? Like, I just noticed while I was chatting with her, there's this little puddle of lightness there, and it's got a really cool tone to it. I'm adding some lemon yellow into it. Just capturing some of these little highlights along the river there. It's a little band of ice or water just coming over. I'm definitely starting to lose the light that I initially started with, so it's definitely time to stop. I don't want to start chasing this light now and changing the light effects that I caught initially in the painting. So I think it's pretty much time to wrap it up now. Maybe just fiddling with a few details. I do have some areas here at the front that have some snow and that on that I haven't really completed yet. Get that foreground in. There's some darker areas in the snow. It's just kind of messy, and points where the grasses and that are coming through. Definitely a lot of that on the edge here. One area I see here that I put put some grasses in there. Now, I do want to try to get a few of these finer branch lines in. I see I have a little bit of time here until the sun is completely down. I'm actually using fairly wet paint at this point to get them in. And I want to warm that up. I definitely. It's a real sort of a tangly looking web of branches up here. So I'll just sort of scrub in a few of those loosely. I find the less I think about it when I'm popping those in, the better. I just really want to create that sense of branches without over detailing. These ones look a little darker on this side there. It's a bit more backlit. So I think we're gonna call it at that for this plein air. My fingers are cold and that tells me it is time to go. I'll probably do a few little touch-ups in the studio when I get it back, but that's pretty much saying what I wanted to say today out here, and maybe just a few tiny little details like I say when we get back, and that'll be this little plein air. Thanks for joining me, and I will catch you on the next plein air.